Today, we're talking about building relationships and resilience. And, relationships is a key to success in life, a key to success in the classroom, key to our overall well being. It's all about having those positive relationships. And so, today, we're going to be talking about how to nurture those relationships. I'm Dr. Barb Brady. I grew up in Clay County, lived there my whole life in a holler with 10 kids, 5 boys, 5 girls, in extreme poverty. Graduated from Clay County High School, did really well. Thank goodness I love to read. So I made good grades, and I had some great people like you in my life who were positive influences, who thought I was the best thing since sliced bread, saw things in me that I did not see in myself, and encouraged me to be my best self, and were very instrumental in me getting out of poverty in Clay County and going on to college and living a life much different than my siblings. Those of you who have had ACEs training, adverse childhood experiences, we know that the more adverse childhood experiences you have, the more health effects you have, both mental health and physical health. And it also leads to early death. And this is really sad. I mean, it's a really sad part of my life, but this is how critical those relationships, nurturing relationships are. I had people who encouraged me, like I said, and I was able to go on to college. With 5 of my siblings, there were 10 of us, and 5 of them are deceased. 2 of them were accidents, and the other one were, some chronic health issues. So that's kind of my background. I'm a mom. I have 4 grown children. I have 10 grandchildren. 3 of my children are adopted. 2 of them were in foster care and had high ACEs scores when they came to live with us. And I'm not an adjunct professor at WVU right now. I was for a while, but I had to give that up because I had too many irons in the fire, like someone else that we were talking to a minute ago. I still do some private practice as a therapist, and I'm the executive director of Inspiring Dreams Network. And our goal is to help build your capacity to work with at-risk youth. So I'm going to move on and talk about today's training. So the objectives today, we're going to discuss the importance of building relationships and resilience. I'm going to share some research, not, nitty gritty, but just some basic research about the key elements of healthy relationships and how it impacts student outcomes. We're going to talk about non-judgmental listening and effective feedback practices that you can give youth to build that positive relationship. We're also going to summarize some key practices, some other key practices: healthy, effective mentoring. We call them mentoring because I had all kinds of adult mentors, even if that's not your official title. As a cook, you can be a mentor. As a teacher, you can be a mentor. As an aide, you're definitely a mentor. You're definitely nurturing and loving and mentoring those kids. We're going to review the 7 keys to building resilience and the mentor's role. And like I said, when I'm using mentor, I'm using it very broadly. To me, a mentor is anyone who positively impacts a student. And we're going to talk a bit about protective factors and some things that you can do as an adult to connect students with protective factors as you build those relationships. And we're also going to talk about some 7 positive experiences that help you thrive and have positive outcomes. For many of us, the pandemic is in the rearview mirror. I know for some of my clients, when certain things happened, they go right back to the pandemic. So they have some of those same feelings of being overwhelmed, disconnected, all of those things that happened during the pandemic. And they definitely remember reaching their surge capacity, which is, parents were being teachers. They were helping educate their kids. They were having to take care of their kids while they worked, so on and so forth. And of course, as we know, students had 3 interrupted school years. It's impacted them academically. It's impacted their social skills. It's in talking with school staff, there's still a lot of residual effect from the pandemic. Part of that, when we think about youth and how they were impacted during the pandemic, kids were exposed to more media, more TV because they were home, and they were constantly hearing about death, despair, violence, racism, discrimination, COVID, fearing for their own life, many lost relatives. It created a lot of anxiety and stress, and the body keeps the score. Those kids are still carrying that anxiety and stress in many instances. Some compared the pandemic to being in a war zone with long-term exposure to toxic stress. Randomized that. So it made kids feel anxious, less safe, and it definitely affected their mental health. And according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the full impact, the interruption to normative socialization and learning is yet to be realized. So your role, even though the pandemic is a couple years in the rearview mirror, as I said, we're still experiencing those residual effects. So your role in forming those healthy relationships with students is more critical than ever. So think about some of your kids right now, and you can just open the mic. You can put it in the chat, or you can open your mic, just unmute yourself and just tell me some of your thoughts about some of the most common issues that you're seeing with experience right now.
Many of my students are just having lots of issues with building relationships, having communications, just some of those social skills that I think we took for granted. They lack so many social interactions at that early age that empathy isn't there. There's just a lot of those social issues that I'm seeing in the classroom that I didn't see 10 years ago.
Very well said. And I'm hearing that from a lot. The social skills are just out the window. I'm hearing so very well articulated. Other behaviors, functional, mental health things you're seeing in the classroom or on the school bus or in the cafeteria.
Yeah, I'm seeing behavior issues also.
So what kind of behavior issues?
I mean, just that's some acting out and just, I mean, I don't know, but just acting out. And I mean, some of it's really
kind
bad.
Of aggressive, aggressive behavior, bullying.
Yeah. Oh, no, not bullying. No,
not bullying.
No, but then, like he said, the social, like the lack of communication. Yeah, like a lot of kids. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else seeing anything different? Okay. I did some research for social emotional learning toolkit that I developed right after the pandemic. And so looking at what the research was saying, what's the impact? And so higher rates of anxiety, depression, eating disorders, bullying, including cyberbullying, weight gain, self-harm, with being withdrawn, just apathetic, keeping to yourself, that whole lack of social skills, decreased motivation. I'm hearing from a lot of schools that students just are not motivated anymore. You know, it's as though they don't think school's important since they were able to practically go without school for the better part of 3 school years. Higher rates of substance abuse, more suicide attempts, more kids showing up in the emergency room with suicide attempts, anxiety attacks, etc. Emotional regulation issues. And when one of you mentioned just acting out, part of it is due to the fact that they just don't know how to regulate their emotions. And so we do a whole other training on that in supporting kids to emotionally regulate. and decreased social skills. So those are some of the things that you say. And if my camera was working, I would do this thing with my hand, with my thumb being the red part of the brain that you're seeing, which is the amygdala, the inner palm of my hand, so you can kind of do it with your own hand, being the hippocampus or the HPA axis. That's the part of the brain that releases stress hormones to the upstairs brain or the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain. And the amygdala is the emotional response system. It's the part that's triggered and different things that's happened in any of our lives in the childhood or, during the pandemic might be triggering. So they might have something that reminds them of that. So if you put your hand in a fist, then I wish my camera was working. And so when we're thinking about our amygdala or our emotional response system being triggered, if you'll flip your hands up, it's like they flip their lid and their upstairs brain stops working. And so some of the kids are just in a constant state of stress. And so their thinking brain's not working, their emotional regulation brain's not working. And so that's what's going on. So they can't hear you. They can't respond to you. You may have taught them how to do a particular math problem yesterday, but if they were in their downstairs brain, or they may have been paying attention yesterday, but if they're in their downstairs brain or their emotional brain, then, they might not even be able to say the ABCs, let alone remember what you taught in class yesterday. And so there's a sheet, Laren, which I did not upload this. So if you'll make a note, we will send this to you afterwards. But these are some common physical, cognitive, social, emotional, language, communication, learning, things that you can look for. And you're probably seeing them. So in order to heal that upstairs brain and calm the upstairs brain to get it to go into the thinking brain, relationships is a builder of that. So when kids are in this trauma response mode, you've probably heard of fight or flight. We know what fight looks like. Flight is, it's actually people who are workaholics who work all the time, maybe fleeing relationships from, their spouse or, someone else or whatever. But those are some things that you would experience. I hope you can see my screen. And then there's freeze. And so that's where you see the depression, disassociation, isolation, zoning out, feeling numb. These kids may appear lazy, but they're really just trying to stay safe. They're really kind of in their downstairs brain or their trauma brain. And then there's fawn, which is the hardest one to recognize because they're trying to stay safe by being a people pleaser. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset anyone. They may be overly compassionate for others. They may be in other people's business. There may be some codependency, lack of boundaries, conflict avoidance, and really kind of a lack of identity, not knowing who they are and just kind of metamorphing into whatever group they're with at the time. And so by helping kids discover relationships can help them discover their identity. Connectedness. Yes.
I just saw in the chat, Tina Hall had a great question. She asked if students could have some of those symptoms all at the same time, like they may show different ones, but all together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a lot of people have a go-to. Like, I didn't know that it was a trauma response when I was growing up, but I used to be the people pleaser. I did not want to upset anyone. Conflict avoidant. I got over that. But yes, you can kind of go through those. I don't know if you would do them all at once, but certainly you could, be people pleasing. You could isolate. You could get so emotionally flooded that you want to fight or yell or cuss and scream or, whatever. So yes, great question. Any other questions in the chat? So what we know is that connectedness, so human connections has the power to counterbalance adversity. And that's Bruce Perry. He wrote a book with Oprah Winfrey. And I should know the name of that, but it's not coming to me right now. But it's a great book. If you look up Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey, it's a great book to read. Oprah Winfrey had an ACEs score, adverse childhood experiences. She had at least 6 bad things happen to her. And so this book talks about toxic stress and, how the body keeps score and her story of overcoming, like what helped her overcome adversity. So no pressure, but your role as a caring adult is more critical than ever in helping improve student success, school success, and their overall well-being. And this is one of my favorite sayings, and it is so true, that every child is one caring adult away from a success story. And so I went to Clay County High School, and many of you may know Mrs. Schoonover. She was a home economics teacher. They don't even have that anymore. But one of the most wonderful humans on the planet. She was really that caring adult in high school that helped me overcome a lot of adversity and be able to believe in myself and move on. So, you can be a Mrs. Schoonover to someone. I'm going to show a video now. We're actually going to start getting into some of the techniques of building caring relationships. I want to talk a bit about the importance of it. And so we'll kind of hit some of the highlights of this. But if you look at the bottom, the link for that is at the bottom. If you want to save it and watch it later.
As a parent, youth worker, or teacher, you may not realize the impact you have on the youth in your community. Young people with mentors are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. Those with mentors are also more likely to have a better relationship with their parents, better communication skills, and higher self-esteem. But how do you build positive and meaningful relationships with youth? 1. Be genuine. Get to know the young person, their personality, interests, and future goals. This will build trust and cultivate a meaningful relationship. 2. Listen. Put away the phone. Turn your body towards them and make appropriate eye contact. Be fully present and don't think about how you will respond. Paraphrase what is said. This shows you're listening and encourages them to open up. 3. Create a psychologically safe space for youth to discuss what's on their mind. Don't rush to judgment or shy away from conflict. Ask clarification questions to understand issues from their perspective. 4. Provide perspective. Adults can help youth consider multiple aspects of a situation. When obstacles seem overwhelming, mentors can help put those challenges into perspective and offer guidance. 5. Foster decision-making skills. Help youth explore options, consider consequences, and seek help when needed. Ask how and what questions. They encourage youth to think critically. Avoid why questions. They often make a person feel defensive. 6. Acknowledge success. Celebrate their accomplishments and ability to navigate their challenges. This will strengthen their ability to persevere towards larger goals. So how can you learn more about mentoring Muslim youth? At the Family and Youth Institute, we specialize in providing communities with practical, research-based mentorship skills. Whether you are a parent, teacher, youth worker, or study circle leader, we have resources for you. Our resources include multiple interactive youth development workshops, free articles, videos, infographics, and webinars. To learn more, join our email list and find us on Facebook and Twitter. Support us by sharing this video and donating so we can develop more resources.
So yeah, that's a great website. And Larry, I believe I listed that. So that's just an example of a video, but they have some other helpful little short videos that you could watch to get some ideas on building healthy relationships and supporting youth. So what they talked about were these 6 key practices: being genuine. And I would say Mrs. Schoonover was the poster child, or poster adult, I should say, both poster adult for being genuine. She never felt fake. She felt so real and genuine. And I could feel her caring, and concerned. She wanted to know all about me, what I was interested in. And so, really, engaging a child takes them believing that you genuinely care about them, what they're interested in, their experiences, so on and so forth. And so, of course, listening. And I'm going to share with you a do's and don'ts worksheet, handout, if you will, step-by-step guide on non-judgmental listening. The minute a child feels like you're judging them, they will stop talking to you. And so it's so important to know how to use that non-judgmental listening by being present, validating feelings, paraphrasing thoughts. So I was a high school counselor for many years, and sometimes kids would tell me like the most ridiculous things, and I just wanted sometimes just laugh or cry or just say, how could you do something so stupid? But I knew if I did that, it would damage my relationship with them. And so I didn't agree with them or their behavior, but I said, well, that must have felt terrible, or wow, that sounds interesting. And so I was kind of validating it and validating their feelings. I can see why that was so upsetting, but you're thinking, if you would not have done something, but I'm not going to say that because that's not. And so you let them they can draw their own conclusions about that, and they're able to get it out if you validate and then, oh, so it sounds like, and then repeat something that they say. And so one of the worksheets that I'm going to share with you later on, and Laren, when I'm talking about that, we'll post that in the chat, and you can print that off and you can kind of look through it and practice. So being genuine, listening, providing a safe space. Safe space means safe from judgment, safe from being told their emotions are stupid, safe from being told they're stupid, safe from being saying that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. And so no judgments, providing perspective and hope. So some of the kids, just like I did, some of the students that you work with really live in it feels helpless and hopeless to them. And so you can give them hope, just like Mrs. Schoonover gave me hope, and my high school counselor called me in and said, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I had no idea. But she's like, well, you're really smart and you can do this and that. So, giving me hope. So giving kids hope and it's not saying, oh, well, you validate their feelings, you validate what they're going through, but you also say, I'm here for you. Together we'll get through this. There's hope for the future, and I'm here. And you're always going to have someone that's going to hold your hand and get you to the next step to where you need to go. So that kind of giving hope, fostering decision making, problem solving. I think I posted a decision making model at the end. If not, I will send that to you. I unexpectedly had to watch my 3-year-old grandson because he had flu A, and I had to have his mom pick him up early. So, it was kind of an interruption. And the last one is acknowledge accomplishments. Even the smallest, teeniest, tiniest thing, saying, wow, you handled that really well. Students who get recognized in most schools are the straight A students, the B honor roll. I know when we were at Greenbrier East, we had like most improved students. So if we see students improving, we recognize them. So figuring out ways to recognize kids for little things. And many schools have the positive behavior interventions and support program, or PBIS. So finding all kinds of ways to acknowledge when they're doing something right and focusing on that as opposed to focusing on what they're doing wrong. You get more of what you focus on. So I said I would talk a little bit about the research. But I'm not going to go into this too much. You can see the slide, but when youth have healthy adult relationships, their social emotional wellness improves, their communication skills improve, their self-awareness improves, their personal responsibility improves, their academic success improves because they know someone has their back and believes in them, so their motivation increases, and as does their civic responsibility. Students with healthy adult relationships are 21 more likely to manage their emotions well. So that's how important this is. 21 more times likely, because they don't want to disappoint you, because they know that you deeply care about them. So being that genuine person that they believe deeply cares about them is so critical. They're 17 times more likely to take personal responsibility for their actions, 5 times more likely to be good at making and keeping plans. Sometimes students are not very good about making and keeping plans because they're living in this world of hopelessness. They don't believe any effort they put forth is going to improve the outcome. So again, helping give them hope gets them to where, okay, I'm going to make some plans because I believe, it can make a difference. 4 times more likely to have a sense of purpose in life. And a sense of purpose is so critical. Simon Sinek, if you ever watched any of his videos or read any of his material, he talks about the importance of you finding your own why. Why do I exist? Why am I here? And the same thing for kids. So helping them find their why is important because oftentimes they're just wandering around lost. Also, healthy adult youth relationships help with increased graduation rates, lower dropout rates, better attitudes about school, better self-esteem, stronger relationships with parents, peers, family, improved interpersonal skills, and a decreased likelihood of using drug and alcohol or abusing it at any chance. So here is another video, and this talks about 5 other principles of building that healthy relationship. And we'll kind of go into it in a little more detail as well.
Pretty much everybody who works with kids or interacts with them knows that relationships matter incredibly for how they develop, they perform in school, where they end up in the future. But that doesn't mean you know how to build a great relationship with a young person who you work with or that you just care about. At Search Institute, we are 4 years into a major project of research to try and open that black box of transformative relationships in kids' lives and really figure out what happens in relationships that help kids be and become their best selves. What we've discovered is that there are 5 critical elements of a developmental relationship. The first of those elements is kind of obvious. It's expressing care. And the key idea there is letting kids know that they matter to you.
Be dependable. Listen. Believe in me. Be warned. Encourage.
The second element of a developmental relationship is challenging growth. And that means pushing kids to continually get better, no matter how well they're already doing.
Expect my best. Stretch. With faith and receiving. Holy accountable.
The third element is providing support. And that means helping kids complete tasks and achieve their goals.
Navigate. Empowered. Advocate. Set boundaries.
Fourth element is sharing power, and that's about treating kids with respect and giving them a say.
Respect.
Include me.
Collaborate. Let me lead.
And the fifth element is expanding possibilities, which means connecting kids with people and places that broaden their worlds.
Broaden horizons. Inspire. Connect.
We know from our studies that when kids experience relationships that are characterized by these 5 elements, they're much more likely to possess key social emotional skills like motivation and a sense of belonging, empathy, and much less likely to engage in risk behaviors. Whether you're working with kids in your job or raising them at home or just interacting with them in your community, we know that if you express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibility, you'll be doing tremendous things to help those kids be and become their best selves. If you'd like to know more about developmental relationships, click the links in the description below and subscribe to our YouTube channel for continuing updates from Search Institute.
You gotta smile. There! All right, there we go.
I may have to.
Pretty much everybody who works with kids.
Oops. May have to exit out of this and get back into the PowerPoint here. So what are your thoughts about that? What are some thoughts about those 5 elements? Are those things that you feel like you're doing?
Yes, I feel that we're doing that already. I mean, as an ECAT aide, I'm doing. I mean, I just do that anyway.
Well, and
I'm carrying
you
it
know,
genuine.
yes. And kids can tell if you're a fake.
Yeah,
They can tell,
Yeah.
They can tell if you're genuine. And being genuine with kids is the most warming thing. And I was going to say at the start of this, that training is that a lot of Southern people, a lot of good old Clay County people, just kind of innately have these elements within them
yeah.
that they resonate every day.
It is like you're born with it, like a God given.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then there are those who don't.
Yeah, that's true.
So just going to kind of go through these in a little bit more detail. The express care is, I want you to show me that I matter. And so, who was just talking? What's your name?
Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm elementary. Some of your meetings before down to health department and with Kelly last year, and the one on last April, I attended those meetings also for them.
Oh, cool. So you did the
mental health.
Connections Matter.
Yeah, the mental health. I done all that, first aid. I done all that.
Awesome.
You
And
did a
here you
good
are
job.
back. Oh,
You did a
thank
good
you
job.
so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. So, show me that I matter. And again, I'm going to talk about Miss Schoonover a lot. Miss Schoonover showed me that I mattered every day. Every time she saw me, her face lit up when I came in the room. It wasn't like, oh, you again? Ugh, I hate my job. What is it, students? And I think she was like that with everyone. I think it was special to me.
Miss Schoonover was awesome. I was in high school. I didn't have her in class, but I remember her being in the high school, and she was just awesome.
Yeah.
When in the hallway, she was just had a light about her, and she was just so nice. So
She did. She exuded
Yeah.
the presence of express
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
She was dependable. She listened. She believed in me. She was very warm, very encouraging. And so being someone that students can trust, that they trust that you have their back.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, and this is how old I am, when I had home economics, we had to do summer projects. And so we got extra credit. And I lived in this little old, where there were 10 kids, and it was, I would say, a 3-bedroom house, and we were piled up everywhere. But my dad was one of those big, just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be dirty or messy. And so our house was pretty clean, but I remember how embarrassed I was about her coming to our house, when I was little. And she just acted like it was a mansion when she got there. And she's like, and Sharon and I just cleaned and cleaned and cleaned, my sister, and I just cleaned and cleaned and cleaned. And she's like, oh, your house is so clean. It's so, and just had nothing but positive things to say. But make me feel known and valued. Show me you enjoy being with me. Praise me for my efforts and achievements. So those are kind of similar to the other elements that we looked at. And then challenge growth. Mrs. Schoonover could challenge me because I knew how much she cared. And really that old verbiage, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, is so true. Because if kids think that you're being mean and you don't care about them, you can't motivate them to learn. You can't challenge their growth. You can't expect them to live up to their potential. You can't push them to go further. You can't insist that they take responsibility. But if they know that you genuinely care about them and you want them to take responsibility for their actions for a reason, then, you're going to be able to push them and challenge their growth. You can help them reflect on failures and talk about all the people in the world that have failed. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb how many times he failed. And so it's that whole try again, and holding them accountable, not so it's important that even when kids are not doing well, that you don't kind of get the fixed mindset that, oh, that's the best he can do, or there's no need to, but it's important to hold kids accountable and say that to them. Sweetheart, I'm going to hold you accountable. So that challenge growth once they know how much you care, and then provide support, help them navigate your system, help them find the communities in school person. And schools are really, really good about, sending meals home and clothing. And, if they tell you that their parents' power is off, that we have the 411 that you can call now and talk to someone and say, okay, this little boy's power is off, and you can connect them to resources. So, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you have physical needs and safety needs at the bottom that's where you're stuck. You can't get to learning and wanting to do better. So that providing support, guiding them through hard situations, helping build their confidence, defending them, advocating for them, setting boundaries. And when I talk about boundaries, I kind of like to think about the New River Gorge Bridge. And I've met parents of both types and teachers of both types and just people of both types, or basically 3 different types. So there are those individuals who have really, really loose boundaries. And, one day they may be loose, one day this may be a rule, the next day this may be a rule. And so just imagine driving across the New River Gorge Bridge at 70 miles an hour without any guardrails. So they are in that constant state of toxic stress when the boundaries are too loose. And likewise, if the boundaries are too tight, if you imagine driving across the New River Gorge Bridge in a tunnel that your car just barely fit through and you had to maintain a certain speed, you're going to have that anxiousness and that stress and that sense of anxiety going on. So if the boundaries are too strict, it's anxiety producing. And if they're too loose, it's anxiety producing. So what you want is guardrails. They can see over the bridge. Keeping kids on track by having boundaries, letting them make choices and saying, I think you're going to make a better choice the next time. But, these are the rules in our classroom, or, whatever. So that providing support with boundaries is important. And then they talked about this in the video. Well, they talked about all of these in the video. Sharing power. But I want to get some feedback. So I want you all to be thinking about this one for a minute, of ways that you can share power with students. If nobody likes to feel like things are being done to them, they like to feel like they're like part of the plan, part of the process. They want to feel respected, like that their needs are respected. Like, nope, these are the rules. Take me seriously and treat me fairly. Include me, collaborate with me, work with me to solve problems and reach goals. Involve me in decisions that affect me. Create opportunities for me to take action. Let me lead. So in your role, and you can put it in the chat, and Lauren, if you see something in the chat, feel free to share that out. So give me some ideas of how you can share power to kind of empower kids to be part of their own success. Are you still hearing me? What are some ways that
said, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Elizabeth said in the chat, every year I have the class develop our classroom rules. I've also had students create project rubrics.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, kids don't want to just see about the rules, but if they help set the classroom rules, and you can say, remember at the beginning of the year, we all decided that these were the rules that we had to have it in order for every student to be successful. What else? Anybody else have any ideas? Well, as a parent, one thing we have, we have 10 grandchildren, but we spend a lot of time with the 3-year-old grandkids. It's a boy and a girl, and we've been keeping them kind of being like the surrogate parents, off and on. And so we really, with 2 very active little ones, we have to have boundaries. And sometimes if they are not adhering to the boundaries, then we have to say, okay, you have choice A or choice B. So, do you want to do X? Do you want to sit on the couch for 5 minutes and calm down? Or do you want to go lay down in the bed until you calm down? And so it's not like a punishment, but it's what will help you calm down. I'm a big discipline person as opposed to punish. Punish to me is kind of being mean and harsh, and discipline is to disciple or to teach. Someone was going to say something.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And so, yeah, it's discipline. And so having logical consequences or natural consequences. And sometimes the twins have logical consequences. We will tell them not to do this or whatever, and they do it, and then they get hurt, and we're like, I'm so sorry you got hurt. What might you do differently the next time? After they calm down. When they're in their downstairs brain, you can't reason with them. Okay, I'm going to move on. And then the last one is expand possibilities. So inspire me to take the Yes.
Well, when you talk about the downstairs brain and calming down, most usually how long does it take for them to calm down? Like 5 minutes or something? I know people are different or kids are different. Like usually 5 minutes before you can reason with them, or they can be in their upper brain or whatever.
You're absolutely right. There's no set time frame. And I think you can see, and part of it is I'm going to share a toolkit with you. I'm going to share a couple toolkits with you at the end that has calming techniques that you can teach kids. And part of it is whether or not they have been taught how to self-regulate, how to calm down, like the star breathing, where you start at the inner point of a star and you breathe in it with your abdomen and you hold it and you release at the top of the star, or you hold it to the top of the star, then you release as you go down and you go all the way around the star, teaching them deep breathing, mindfulness. And so if they have some good calming techniques, they can calm down rather quickly. And some kids calm down easily with sensory items, like having a squishy ball. And so I recommend, and that's in that's in my ACEs training, I recommend that every classroom have a calm down corner. And so having something like a big stuffed beanbag chair and having some manipulatives that, kids can squeeze, or having a star on the wall that they can do the deep breathing. And so instead of having to send a student to the counselor's office, teaching them that we all get upset sometimes. I get upset. And you don't want them to miss the whole class period. So if they could just calm down, and they know when they're emotionally regulated, but Will, my grandson, we had him part of the day today, and part of his thing was he wasn't feeling well. So everything that I asked him, I was like, do you want this? No. Do you want that? No. Do you want? No. So I was giving him all kinds of choices, and all of them were no. And so finally, I just had to leave him alone, and he fell asleep in the floor. Um, so having that calm down corner, it could be that they're just exhausted. Their parents might have been fighting half the night. And so if they're not getting enough sleep, they're going to be harder to emotionally regulate. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's about teaching them how. Again, it's that whole discipling them. It's about teaching them skills to emotionally regulate.
Yeah. Yeah, that,
And so yeah, okay, great. And so what opportunities are you giving kids to see? A lot of people are like, oh, they're just on a field trip today. Those field trips are critical to expanding possibilities for kids. You know, you never know when you're going to take a child somewhere and they're going to see something that's going to inspire them. You know, I want to be this when I grow up, or I want to be that, or I want to be kind like her. She was so kind. And, you know, so bringing people into the classroom to open their horizons is critical. And I'm just looking at why that developmental frameworks was on there. It should be on a different slide. So, we talked in the beginning about some risk factors. And so these are conditions or characteristics of individuals, families, communities, society that increase your likelihood initiating substance use or acting out or not succeeding in school, that kind of thing. So what are some of the risk factors that you can think of that your kids have that they need support with? What are some of the risk factors they're experiencing in their families? Can anybody think of anything?
So I would say they have a lot of unmet needs. The high school students have a lot of unmet needs because
What are some of those unmet needs?
some of them don't have adequate clothing. Some of them don't have adequate food. We have lots of kids at the high school that will eat the after school lunch, even though they're not staying after school because they don't have food at home. And they don't want to tell anybody that they don't have food at home because they're old enough to know that can cause something else to happen that they don't want to happen. We have kids that don't have adequate clothing, but they don't want to say anything to anybody at the high school level because they know what that could make happen in their situation. And maybe they don't want to not live where they're living anymore. Maybe they don't want to be taken away with whoever they're living with right now. Because they think that the next situation may be worse. And so they will just not say anything. And so unless you're looking and unless you're noticing things, they don't talk as much about it as like little kids do. Like really little kids will talk about stuff and not really know what the impact of them talking about that is with the teacher. But high school kids totally know what the impact of that is. And you have to kind of just listen to them. And like I've heard kids say, I heard a kid tell another kid that he cut his finger doing something at home and like now it's infected and there's pus coming out of it. And his dad told him to wash his hands before he made him a sandwich. And so you have to listen to them more because they're not going to come up and tell you like maybe a little kid would.
Right. And I don't know, this prompted me to think of a training that one of our partners does. And they do for us. And Stephanie, it's something that you might want to put on your training agenda for next year for this, or if you're, involved with another one. It's called Lean on Me, and it was developed by the Prevent Child Abuse West Virginia organization. And so it is about when we know kids are struggling at home, letting the families know that they can lean on you, that you're not the first thing what you're talking about is calling CPS or calling the police or, that's not going to be the first thing you're going to do unless you know the child is in imminent danger. Things like poverty, substance abuse in the home, all of those kinds of things contribute to a home environment that, contributes to them not having clothing and food. And so what can we do to help build up the family instead of tearing them down? So that Lean on Me training has some great strategies for working with families. So you might want to put that on your list so that kids get to the point where they know they can lean on you, that you're not going to immediately pick up the phone and call, DHHR, who's overwhelmed. And anyway, so thank you for sharing that. So risk factors also, there's adverse childhood experiences. So it's parents having, low educational attainment levels, living in poverty, living in neighborhoods that experience high levels of violence, the numerous things that kids, might be dealing with. And so what you all as you're building relationships, once you build those relationships and like you said, get to know those kids and really listen to what they're saying, you can start identifying protective factors. So protective factors are things that counterbalance that. So if you look at the graphic on the bottom, if you have more risk factors than protective factors, you can kind of feel stuck or like you're balancing a scale. So what we want to do is figure out ways that we can provide protective factors. And unless we listen and build that relationship with them, we won't really understand. And so protective factors is also related to building resilience. So this training is called Building Relationships and Resilience, and having good protective factors helps build resilience. So protective factors are basically people and resources in a young person's environment that are likely to influence their ability to overcome. Number one at the top is connection with a caring adult. Family support, so that Lean on Me. What are you doing to support families? Because what's going on with the family impacts the success of the child. Positive peer support. So what do you have going on to train peers how to support other peers, how to, there are all kinds of different programs like lunch buddy programs, for instance, where no child sits alone. So they're at least offered. They're invited into the groups, that kind of thing. Strong sense of self, positive self-esteem. And so we'll talk more about that. Future career aspirations, that's that growth point, giving them hope, and engagement in school and community activities. So looking at what are we doing to involve kids, what kind of community activities. The more we do that, the more we're building that adult relationships, not, across the school, that we're giving them opportunities to see the science teacher as a human, as someone who cares about them. And you can't really see this, but Laren, you could post this in the chat or we can send it to you. And I'm not going to go through this entire thing, but, what are some things you can do to help positive physical develop, calming down and giving brain breaks, self-esteem, supportive relationships. And so going through this with a child, and if you're a science teacher, you might not have time, but if you have a student, there might be that one or two kids that you might say, hey, would you mind stopping by at lunch? I'd just kind of like to check in with you. And you can kind of build some of these relationships and activities. I know it's not easy. I know how difficult teaching is, and, creating your lesson plans, rating everything, but taking that extra little bit of time to build that relationship. And you know, you might not have this out and do it, but you keep looking at it and you keep kind of talking with them about what are your protective factors, and then thinking about what can not, you know, what can we do as a school to help support this child. So next, we're going to talk about resiliency, what that means, and we're going to talk about some ways that you can help build resilience. And it looks like we have a couple things in the chat. So Laren just posted the CDC Youth Resiliency PDF that has a lot of really good information on building resilient youth and what you can do. And you will see relationships is a big part of that. Let me see what else we have. Anybody have any thoughts about the training so far? Any questions before we go on? Somebody put neglect as a risk factor. The older students talk with each other and they try to support each other. So there are all kinds of peer support programs out there that you can. When I was a school counselor, we had natural helpers, we had peer mediators. We initially brought experts in to train them. And of course, as advisors, we went with them through the training and we're like, heck, we can do this. And, you know, we were the advisors, we worked with them and they had us to, like when they struggled and they knew how to not get themselves in unsafe situations, etc. So resilience is the capacity to recover quickly or to difficult situations and adapt to challenging life experiences, especially when experiences present mental or emotional challenges. So resilient individuals, so you want your kids to show emotional and mental toughness. You want them to have the ability to be flexible, so they need to see you being flexible. It's important to model that. They're able to emotionally regulate. If they've never been taught, if they've just been yelled at by a parent and say, that's enough, calm down, you're overreacting again. And so part of that is, you know, validating, you know, you're really upset right now. I can see why you're upset. Why don't you take a minute? But teaching, and I'm going to show you, you know, I'm going to show you a great resource that's free, some resources that are free that can help kids develop coping skills and emotionally regulate. But they have to trust you in order to want to learn them. So building that relationship, doing those first steps that we talked about is critical. And so they're able to adjust to external and internal demands. And I don't know. So what we do is we teach them how to navigate the road that lies before them instead of changing the road for them. So, you know, how do you navigate that instead of, and that's one of those key strategies was, you know, expect a lot from me. And so, you know, teaching them how to emotionally regulate. It's like, I know you can do this. You know, take a deep breath. Let's do some deep breathing. Let's do some mindfulness. So anyway, then they kind of have that never give up attitude. So Dr. Ginsburg, who's a child pediatrician and human development expert, did a lot of research and identified these things in his clients or in the students that he worked with. The ones that were successful and resilient had competence and confidence. So what's the difference between competence and confidence? Who wants to try on that one?
This is Tina. competence is having the ability to do something, whereas confidence is believing that you can do something.
Perfect. Well said.
Which I might struggle with myself.
We all do from time to time. So competent is, I can play the piano. I'm very competent at that. I'm not. I wish I was. But someone who can play the piano is competent. And I might have confidence that I can play the piano someday. I might be competent at math, or I might not be, but I might be able to have you inspire me to have the confidence that if you haven't read Carol Dweck's book on mindset, she talks about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And so part of what we do as mentors, as people who are trying to build those relationships, is we try to move our kids from fixed negative mindsets.
Go to the cafeteria. Your snacks are on.
To I think someone needs to maybe mute their mic. So part of that is a fixed mindset is I'm not good at math. A growth mindset is I'm not good at math yet. Or, and you even saying that, well, sweetheart, you're not good at math yet, but we're going to get you a tutor. You can be good at math. And then, acknowledging the little steps when they're learning. And so they'll develop their confidence. Hey, I can learn math. I can be good at math. And then connection, we've been talking about that. Character. One of the activities and one of the toolkits that I'm going to talk about has this thing that you can do if you're working with kids. You wouldn't want to have it's called a character chain. And so, you construction paper you cut out, and you staple them or glue them together, and you make a ring of construction paper, all different colors. And some people decorate their Christmas trees with them, or their classroom or whatever. And so if you're working with a child, teaching them about character, and every time you notice a character strength, adding a link to their chain. Contribution. When people are contributing to the greater good, they're focused on that, and it makes them feel good about themselves as opposed to being focused on their own problems. So what opportunities are you giving kids to make a contribution? Again, teaching coping skills and self-control. And so those are the 7 keys to resilience.
Hey, Barb.
Yes.
We have a message in the chat. Melanie
Okay.
said confidence doesn't necessarily mean competence.
Absolutely. Confidence just is, I believe I can. I'm not good at that yet. Very good. Thank you for sharing. And so here's a way to help kids develop competence, giving them opportunities to practice skills. Like I'm competent now at emotionally regulating because I've learned all these skills. I can calm myself down more quickly than a lot of people, So, and then teaching and practicing communication skills. The twins have a big sister who is not my son's biological daughter, but we inherited her, and she's a gem, and we love her. And she was in kindergarten when they moved here, and she rode the bus to my house. And so she would get off the bus, and I had to meet her at the bus, or they wouldn't let her off the bus. So I had to set an alarm because I get busy and distracted that says, watch for school moments. So I would go meet her. And of course, I want to know about what her day's like and blah, blah, blah. So I would start talking to her, and she would look at the ground. And I would say, sweetheart, can you look me in the eyes? And of course, that kindness, being kind. And then we would talk about things that were non-threatening, like, ooh, did you see the plant flowers that are coming out? And she really got interested in my flowers. Every day we would look and see what new flowers were blooming and what, and it's just that relationship building. And she gets me flowers every day, every year for Mother's Day, really pretty flowers because we have a relationship. And she knows I like flowers and she's learned to like flowers. So it's really teaching, teaching her to look at me, teaching her to put her shoes by the front door so she doesn't drop one here and one there and a sock here and a sock there. And so it's that constantly teaching and practicing. And so teaching. So if you have good communication skills, if you notice, instead of just being like, oh, that's how kids are today. No, I mean, we can model that and we can teach it and we can draw it out in a kind way that, hey, look me in the eyes. And, teaching them conflict resolution, teaching them social skills. And so a lot of, school counselors do that. Some of the high schools, and I know Clay County High School has the Links program where you all do some skill building and identify clubs that the students may be interested in. So if they're interested in archery, get someone in the community to come in and do an archery club. So those clubs, even though you might think they take up time from the school day, it's building competence and it's helping increase learning. So confidence, again, creating a reward system, focusing on what a child is doing right, creating scenarios where your child can practice handling a situation with confidence, doing some live scenarios in the class. Right. And I know this doesn't help students identify their individual strengths, even as cooks. And it may not even be like an individual strength. It may be just something that you say to them. Like a cook could easily say, you have the prettiest eyes. Or, I love that sweater. I love that smile. And so it's like seen. Helping kids feel seen is just so important. And encouraging volunteer and leadership positions in the classroom. A lot of classrooms, and I don't know if there are even things you can do in the cafeteria or on the school bus, but what are some things that we can create, like leadership, where the big kids help the smaller kids? So all of that kind of thing builds confidence. And then community. Yes.
Tina said, sometimes kids just want to be noticed by someone.
Absolutely. And you would not believe how much just being noticed can build a child's confidence. If they walk through the cafeteria line every day and get their tray and nobody speaks to them, I'm using that as an example because I believe we have a couple of customers here. I've been blessed, throughout my elementary, all my school of having such sweet, kind people who work in the cafeteria. Now, there have been a couple exceptions, but just noticing, or just, if you're in the hallway, seeing a student that is struggling and thinking of something nice, encouraging that you can say to them. So, yes, absolutely, just noticing. So, community connections. So, giving kids a sense of security, a sense of making a difference, a sense of belonging. So, having like little school parades, gardens, fairs, having those live fairs where kids work on a science project or, like a theater, they put on a little theater production, or they're in the choir. And people, they feel like I belong. I'm part of this group. Things like even gardening, having and do any of your schools do school gardens? That's a great thing to do. So just thinking of ways that you can build connections among kids and cross generations, really, having that multi-generational opportunities for connections. Caring relationships, you and your role. I talked about natural helpers, grandparents, read for the day, parents, read for the day, business, read for the day. just being genuine, non-judgmental. I don't think big brothers, big sisters. Do you all have boys and girls clubs or big brothers, big sisters? No.
Not that we have anything like that.
But you can be that caring relationship. Sometimes kids just want to be noticed by someone. You already said that. Okay. You're the chat. And then character. And so for years now, schools have kind of gotten engaged in character education. Why? Because it builds resilience. So teach and model expected behaviors, incorporating character ed programs, the OVAS bullying prevention program, school culture. So there's some activities in these toolkits that I have mentioned that have some different ideas on character building. So, even bibliotherapy, or even like there's several elementary folks on here, getting books that you read to children that identify positive characters, because they might not even know what character is. So the importance of being trustworthy, transparent, authentic, honest, loyal. And so integrity. And integrity, there are several little books that, that you can get where kids learn that, ooh, that person was saying this, but they were actually doing this, and they really did not have so they learn what integrity is. And so it's important to say what I mean and mean what I say and be who I am. Selflessness, being humble, courageous, respectful, teachable, generous. I don't know if you all, I shouldn't use the word hate. Dislike, I guess. I dislike people who are know-it-alls, who know everything and they're not teachable. They think they already know everything. I don't know everything. I never will know everything. I'm very teachable. But my mom had this friend who I would get a migraine and have to leave because everything I said, she knew more, she knew better. It was just, so teaching them how important it is to be teachable. And the fact that I'm a lifelong learner, I'm constantly learning, and then trusting, caring, just, reliable, dedicated, intentional. So in our literature, we can read books, embed these character traits into them. Self-disciplined, future-focused, confident, so on and so forth. So do you all do character education? I know some schools think we don't have time for that, but it's so critical to youth development. Just looking at the time here, I think we're good. So contribution is another character, resilience. What opportunities are you giving kids to contribute? I know some of you are from Big Otter Elementary School. An example of contributing would be, my mom was actually in the nursing home there, and she loved it. We took her out during the pandemic, and I moved in with her, and she ended up passing away at home. But she would tell me about these kids, like they would come trick-or-treating, and they would, sit by their door and have little treats for the kids. And the kids would come by. One group of kids brought them Christmas cards, that they cut out things from old Christmas cards. And so that makes it really, the light on the faces of these elderly people who don't feel seen in lots of cases just light up like a Christmas tree when they see these kids, and it makes the kids light up to make their day. And so thinking about ways that you can help kids make a contribution at school and in your little community. So designing a school project that allows students, designing a science project. I know we have a couple two or three science teachers on here. So what could we do as a science project that would help kids contribute to their community? Notice and say thank you when you notice students contributing in a positive way. And teaching coping skills, mindfulness, deep breathing. We've talked about that. Calm down corners. There are all kinds of little things that you can get to go in a calm down corner, and you don't need a lot of space to do that. But just a place, if I'm upset, I can get a drink, I can put my head down, I can read a book, I can hug a stuffed animal. So you would probably want to have stuffed animals in your calm down corner. I can use my words. So I keep talking about my grandchildren, 3-year-old, William and Layla Grace. Layla is really good. They're both really smart, of course, I think that. And Layla Grace's vocabulary is just amazing. And William's is, amazing, pretty amazing too. But he likes to whine when he wants something. And so if he's watching a show on TV and he wants the channel changed, he starts. And I'm like, use your words. Use your words. And he's getting so much better at that. I'm like, I don't understand whining. Grammy doesn't respond to whining. I know you're sad because your show went off, but come and use your words. And he's really, unless he's not feeling well, he's really getting good at that. Teaching them to count to 10 during yoga, think happy thoughts, draw a picture. So teaching coping skills. If they have a relationship with you, they'll let you teach them coping skills. Instead of saying, that won't work, because they don't trust you. So if they have a trusting relationship, and you could say, well, sweetheart, can you just try it for me? So, yeah,
Sorry,
I'm going
we
to
have a
talk to
couple
Lara in just a
messages.
minute, and then Lara, would you could post that 40 developmental assets handout?
Yep.
Okay, who was asking a question? I'm sorry, I interrupted someone.
I think it was me. I was just going to say there's a couple messages in the chat.
Oh, awesome.
Janie said, technically, character education is required by WVDE. Samantha
Yes, it
said,
is.
myself as a lunch lady, I give all my students attention, but some get a little more than others.
Good for you. Yay!
And then
Some need a little more.
Joshua said, I keep a couple stuffed animals on my bus to distract and calm students.
Oh, wonderful, Josh. That's wonderful. So, Lauren, if you could post those 40 developmental assets. So I'm going to talk about these for a minute. So the search, that one's for middle school. There's one that's the developmental assets framework. It has all of them in it. So if you're in middle school, you can click on that one and look at it. The Search Institute is a wealth of resources to help build relationships and to support students. And so they have done, and I'll use Clay County terms, they have done tons of research over the past few years. And these developmental assets have been around for a while. So these are like building blocks of healthy development for youth. And so they have several there's 40 developmental assets for each specific. So there's like preschool, K through 2, I think it is, 3 through 5, middle school, and high school. And so I would like for you to click on that if you have a laptop or a phone where you can look at it. And I want you to find the developmental assets for the group that you work with. So if you work with middle school, you can see here, family support, empowerment. This is my battery is running low. Or that the light's not charging. I don't know if you did something to this. Look. It's the front to move where I can plug in because my little 3-year-old is getting into everything. Then one with somebody had not ordered with that. What? Any of these expenses, I'm like that. I'm like that. I want you to find the one for your. Yeah, I want you to share either in the chat. I want you to look at those developmental assets. So there's external, internal, there's different types of developmental assets. And I want you to look at those and I want you to tell me what you as a person or you in your classroom or you in the cafeteria or as a bus driver, what's a developmental asset that you might be able to have a positive impact on? Have you been able to download that? Looks like we have some things in the chat. Caring school climate, school engagement, honesty. So how might you be able to contribute? Responsibility, giving kids, hold me accountable, help me be responsible, help me have a growth mindset as opposed to I'm not good at anything. Help me say, oh, well, actually, I noticed yesterday that you're very good at safety, teaching them that they are responsible for doing their own work, asking for makeup work when they miss it. Absolutely. And so that's that holding them accountable, constructive use of time, boundaries and expectations, positive peer influence, especially male role models in today's time. Absolutely. Being there at school every day and greeting them every day. Absolutely. And connections matter. When we do the longer version of it, there is a video that shows a teacher standing outside his door that has a different handshake or hand slap or elbow bump or a different physical greeting that he does with every child. And some children that, don't appreciate physical touch for obvious reasons, your thing might be just a thumbs up or a big smile at each other. And so learning kids and greeting them, I think that's critical. Any other thoughts about building? So that's something good to look at for you to print off and keep and look at your particular developmental age, whether it's preschool, kindergarten, very early education, middle school, high school. What are some things that we can look at in building? And some of the things are out of your control, but there are things that you can do to help build those developmental assets. Okay. So another thing that you can do that builds those relationships is somebody put school climate in the chat box. And school climate will be very positive if you have a trauma-informed approach. And we do training on that as well, that promotes dignity, strength, empowerment, and meeting individuals where they are. And that lean on me, part of that training that I don't do, but one of my colleagues does, and we can arrange that for you, is really that approach is meeting people where they are and how can we help pull them up by the bootstraps and move to the next level so that they are able to feed their kids and clothe their kids and so on and so forth. But a trauma-informed framework recognizes that there is profound neurological, biological, psychological, and social effects of trauma, that they have those on the individuals, and that every child is potentially operating in their trauma brain. So if we use that trauma-informed approach, we teach everyone as though they may have experienced trauma, because they may have, or they may not have, but still it's a positive way and so basically it sets up a framework. So if you're thinking about, in the cafeteria, in the classroom, on the bus, the school environment, making sure that kids have a sense of safety. I am safe on this bus. I am safe when I walk through the cafeteria line. I am safe when I'm sitting in the cafeteria eating my lunch. Physically safe, psychologically safe. We're not going to allow bullying to go on. And then trustworthiness and transparency. That you're going to be, it's not going to be an I got you game. Kids are going to know what's up. These are my expectations. I'm going to be totally transparent. And part of that transparency is you can make up the work. We all have bad days. I believe in you. What can I do to support you? And then the peer support we've talked about. Collaboration. Power differences. So between staff and clients, it says, but between staff and students are leveled to support decision making. So part of that are some of those elements that we've already talked about. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Involve me. Empowerment, humility, and responsiveness. Did someone have something you wanted to say?
There was a new message in the chat.
Awesome.
Tarina said, I tried breakfast to say hi to the kids, and if I know they've been sick, I try to ask if they're feeling better or ask how their weekend was.
Perfect. Being seen. Being seen, it's every child should feel seen and cared about. Perfect. But it's little things. It's not like rocket science, as I would say. But some people have so much of their own stress that it's hard to kind of break away from that, put your focus on, other people. You just don't take the time to stand at the door and greet students when they come in. Or even if you're sitting at your desk, calling out the kids by name. Hey, Barb, it's your weekend. Hey, Tommy. You feel seen. It's so important for those just kids feeling seen, cared about, and like their involvement matters will make a huge difference. So here is one of the toolkits that I've been talking about, and I think there you have the actual PDFs of these that you can upload in the chat box. So Toolkit 1.0 was developed by Dr. Chris Schimmel, who was for many years. She was a school counselor educator at Marshall and then WVU, and now she is actually at West Virginia Wesleyan. But she was commissioned to write this, so she wrote this with some of her practicum students. And so it is full different types, social emotional tools that you can help kids to emotionally regulate, feel good about themselves. And even though it's broken down by grade level, like pre-K to 2, 3 to 5, most of those you can use with any age group. Some of them you have to provide more assistance. You might have to read it to them. You might have to have more interaction with them. but it talks about how to use art and drawing as a coping skill, bibliotherapy, yoga, circles of control, my tranquil turtle. And so take a look at that. I'm obviously not going to teach those. And then that was written pre-pandemic. So it was just, kids were already struggling with coping skills and emotional regulation and social skills and all of that. And so she was commissioned to do that pre-pandemic. And then post-pandemic, they commissioned me, and my leadership vista at the time helped with it. Her name is Candace Smith, and she was a tremendous support. But this one is a framework for mentor. And so really, the Education Alliance has mentors that go into the school. So we use the mentor language. But again, I want to broaden that to I'm a mentor, you're a mentor, we're all mentors. And so chapter 1 talks about the impact of the trauma. So that's where I did that research that I mentioned earlier. And mental health struggles, some look for, some signs and symptoms, if you will, some signals that you might notice. And then chapter 2 is how to support students navigate that 3-tiered, multi-tiered system of support that's in schools. Chapter 3 is the whole section is dedicated to building protective factors and resilience in students. And then chapter 4 has a lot of activities, coping skills, different type of skill building things. And so here are some of the things that are in chapter 4. It really gives you a lot of information about building calm down corners. There's the same and different exercise, 7 pillars of self-care, something that you can go over with them to say, well, what are you doing in this area for self-care? If you're concerned about a student. And there's a My Protective Factors worksheet that you can help look at what kind of protective factors do you already have, and what can I or us as a school system, me as a bus driver, help build. And I talked about that strengths chain earlier. There's a lot of information in there about building that. Calming volcanic emotions, it has some worksheets or some practical things that will work to help kids calm down their emotions in a non-threatening, loving, relationship-building way. Let's make a plan, problem solving, self-help plan, teaching them how to help themselves, how to advocate for themselves if you're not there to advocate for them. So just helping them. Okay, the next time it happens, let's look at that. And so that's a tool that helps them build a self-help plan using I statements. Well, that's kind of out of order. That's control. That's the resilience, the ability to control oneself, including one's emotions and the behaviors to achieve positive outcomes. So, so these are some activities that help with that in that toolkit. And these, I sent there a list of sites that I don't know if you can post that as a document, but it has, this site is on there. This has information that you can go back and review, approaches to expressing care, finding out what kids are curious about. That's getting to know them, building that relationship. What makes you happy? So ways to do that, ways to learn, like what makes kids happy, what might motivate them, what might make them want to change their trajectory, you know, from having behavioral issues and not doing their homework to turning that around. Inspirational letter to future self. I did this with when I was a high school counselor. I did this with all of my kids. So I had them write a letter to themselves about what they would accomplish while they were in high school and what people would say about them when they were walking across the graduation stage based on their behavior, their achievement, so on and so forth. And then every now and then I would have to get the letter out and say, I want you to read this. And is your behavior moving in that direction? And so that's a good thing to do. By the end of first grade, what do you want to accomplish? By the end of, you know. So all kinds of really cool resources here. And then Lauren is going to post this in the chat. It's non-judgmental listening that we talked about early this can be your cheat sheet when you're communicating with kids. If you want to build that positive relationship, here are some do's and here are some don'ts. I mean, you don't want to do this. You don't want to shame, blame, but instead you want to say, hey, I noticed recently that, is there something you want to talk about? And it's about maintaining, it's about not being distracted while you're talking with them. There's some more do's and don'ts. So you have that. Of course, if I'm doing a workshop, we're going to actually practice using these skills, in a workshop, if I'm doing like an all-day workshop with someone. And then reflective listening, the steps, and then what you can actually say for each of those steps. And we don't have time to go through all of them, but using things like, hey, how are you doing? And, using the terms, what happened to you? What happened, instead of what's wrong with you? That implies that's kind of negativity. Do you want to talk? So saying what happened to you, not what's wrong with you. And using that reflective language, it sounds like you feel angry right now. Feels like you feel frustrated. Just being seen and heard and felt. This person gets me. Things like, tell me more. Let me see if I understand what you're saying, and repeat what you think you heard them say. Or sometimes when kids are really anxious, they're like rambling on and on and on. And it's like, the sweetheart, I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So let me see if I understand. Can we take a breath? And then I want you to finish. I want to hear what you have to say. But what I'm hearing you say is, so there's a whole more steps in that. Are you saying X or are you saying Y? And then hopefully, I think it looks like I cut off part of the QR code there. So I am going to get out. Let me see here. So we have a youth development portal. And so you could scan with your phone if you have your phone handy and you're not on it. This QR code, and it takes you straight to our youth development portal. And one of the things that Lauren is doing is she's building, she's continually researching and looking for new resources for folks like you to use. So I'd love for you to scan it and check it out. So there are resources for adults who serve youth, families, and then for youth themselves. Some youth, so this is something you can let your kids know about. Middle, high school, college age, they might not feel comfortable. Their relationship with adults has been damaged so badly that they might not feel comfortable talking with you, but they might go to the website and check a video on anger management or ways to calm down, that kind of thing. So hopefully you've had time to scan that. So I'll go back into PowerPoint mode, and we're finishing up here. We're on and these are just resources. I'm going to share PDF copy of PowerPoint with you. And so lots and lots of great resources here. And references for the training. And what we would like to have your feedback on the training, what you found beneficial or not beneficial or whatever. But I want to just give us a bit of time to chat, see what kind of questions you have. What are your thoughts? And I think Lauren is also putting an evaluation link in the website or in the chat. Questions, thoughts? Lauren is putting lots of great resources in here for you. There should be just that regular URL link too, if someone is not on their phone and they need to click on it. There you go. Are you still with me? I know that was,
Yeah.
I do want to
I
say
think
that.
you did a good job.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What I want to know is, did you learn something that you might be able to apply? Some strategy or tip or something or resource? Oh,
I think it's all good refreshment.
Awesome.
I think it's good to be validated because I think we're doing some of these things,
Mm-hmm.
but it's good to know, hey, you're going the right direction. And then also having a resource. We've heard about so many strategies and things to do, but having somewhere to go, after this is over, we're going to remember everything. And then going back to these resources that you're providing. So thank you.
You are welcome.
I was going to tell you, Barb, I didn't know if you want to tell them how great that April the 12th thing, it's what day it's going to be, mental health class will be, or training. I know
Oh,
last
okay.
year
We
I
do.
enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. It sounds excruciating. Like, oh, it's going to be so, because it's 6.5 hours. It's a very long day. But tell them how interactive that was and how
Oh,
much
yeah.
fun it was.
It was fun. We interacted. We got in different groups, what we thought, like our ideas, and we got like different groups, like 5 or 6 in each group of what we thought. And we just interacted a lot and writing down stuff and our ideas. And it just was interacted or interaction. The interaction was good. And then, of course, we had pizza and food. That was
Yeah.
good.
And we'll
But
provide
we did learn
pizza.
a lot.
We'll
And you
feed
did a
you.
good job. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And my co-trainer,
You're welcome.
Paula Kerner, will be training with me again, and she does a good job. So,
Yeah, you
yeah,
did a good
thank
job.
you for reminding me. We have our next training with you guys is Connections Matter on March 18th. And then we are doing the full day youth mental health first aid that teaches you a 5-step process filled with activities to identify kids who are in mental health distress, and then a step-by-step process for supporting them. So thank you for joining us.